Hi, it's the physics dude here. So today we're gonna introduce sets. So what is sets and why is sets important? So sets is how it's the language of math. It's how mathematicians communicate, right? So they don't write in their mathematic paper that they don't say something like in English for all integer. Instead, they write it in some kind of notation, which simplify it, right? Because they want to express the most information with the least amount of effort by writing these little symbols that mean things. So let's get started. What is a set, right? Set is a collection of things. So in this first example we have here, we can see that A equals to, this is what we call a set sign. So whenever you see these signs, it means like this is the opening, and this is this is the closing. This is a set. Okay, this is a set. So a set contains like elements. So you see in sets A, there's 1, 2, and 3. So we would call that 1, 2, 3 are elements of set A, right? So in the B example, there's 0 and 1 in the set B. So we could say that 0 and 1 are are element of set B. So there's in the C example, there's -1 and 3. So we would say that -1 and 3 are element of set C. So yeah, so let's get to see all these notation that I wrote down here. They might seem a little bit weird, but they're actually not that hard if you learn it. So the first symbol we have here is a C looking like thing with a horizontal straight line in the center. So what does it mean? So this sign mean, when we use this sign, it means it's an element of. So what would be example? Well, it's an element 4, right? So like I talked about in the set A, let's look at set A. Set A, you have 1, 2, 3. So 1 is an element of set A, right? So we will simply write it as 1, this sign A. So if you write this in English, it should be 1 is an element of A, which is quite right? So you could, there's also 2, A, because also 2 is an element of A, right? So there's like 3. So 3 is also an element of A, but not 4, because 4 is not included in this whole set, right? So there could be like 0 is an element of B, so it will be like something like this. 0 will be an element of B. So right, that's quite simple. Okay, so let's look at the second notation. So what does the second notation say? Well, if you look at it, these two signs, they look quite similar. So you could kind of guess that the second sign means is not an element of, right? Because it's like there's like a horizontal, there's a vertical line crossing through the whole line of the whole notation of is an element of. So we could just this could easily be is not an element for no of. So what would be example again? So let's look at A. So for set A, we have 1, 2, and 3. So it only include 1, 2, and 3. So what about 0 and 4? They're not an element of set A, right? So we could simply write it as 4, this sign A. So what this says in English is that it is 4 is not an element of A. So what about 0? Is 0 an element of A? Well, no, right? Because there's only 3 elements in the set A. 1, 2, and 3, and 0 is not one of them. So you could maybe even write 0 as 0 like this. Is not A, set A. So for set B, there's 0 and 1. So 2 is not an element of set B, right? So we could simply write it as 2 isn't remember, the sign means is not an element of. So 2 is not an element of B. So that's quite understandable, right? So let's look at the third notation. So the third notation means that is a subset of. So what does this mean? So let's look at oh my let's look at a new set. So if we write this set as so let's call this set D, and it includes, let's say, 1 and 2. So do you see any common similarity between these two? Right? So 1 and 2 are both an element of set A and set D. So in this case, so what does this go? Let's go down here. What does this sign mean again? So you could basically say that D is a subset of A. Why? So subset means like kind of like include. So you can see here that in the set D there's two element, which is 1 and 2, and they're both an element in the set A as well. So you could include set D in the set A, right? So you would say that set D is a subset of A by writing it out like this. So let's get to the next. So this U-shaped thing is it means the unions. It means the unions of sets. So what does that mean? So let's say, okay, so let's look at set A and set B, right? So set A has 1, 2, and 3, and set B has 0 and 1. So what would be a union? What does a union mean? Union mean when they mix together. That would be like a form of union, right? So if we write union of, if we want to unify set A and set B, we write it in the form like this: A, use U notation, B. So what does this mean? This means we try to unify A and B together. So let's look at A and B. So A has 1, 2, 3, and B has 0 and 1. So they all have 1 in common. So we can just write their answer will actually be 0, 1, 2, 3. So this set, this new union of these two sets contains every number in set A and set B. They all contains it, right? So they set A and set B has 0, 1, 2, and 3, which the new union contains. So union is the mix, the mix between two sets. That's what you want to think of it as. So let's look at the others, the next sign. So the next sign is like an opposite of a U, like an and sign. So what does it mean? It means intersection of sets. Interception. Section of sets. So what does it mean? So let's write it out. So if we write it in the form of A and B, so intersection. So let's look at the example A and B again. So A has 1, 2, 3, B has 0 and 1. So let me ask you, what is the common between them? What do they both have that can intercept? Right, it's 1, because you see set B doesn't have 2 or 3, and set A doesn't have 0. So their only common thing is 1, right? So we'll write that the intersection of sets between the sets A and sets B as 1. So think of this as the common thing between them, which in this case is only number 1, right? So maybe another example will be, what about the intersection of sets A and C, right? So sets A has 1, 2, 3, set C has -1 and 3. So what do they have in common? They all have the number or the element 3, right? So we could write it and another again as so A intersection of A and C, and it would be 3, because this is the only common thing they have. Like number A doesn't have -1, right? So there's only common thing they have. So let's look at the next one. So the next one, the idea here is that it's an empty set. That might seem confusing at first. This is an empty set, so it has nothing. So this will be it. It has nothing in it. So then you probably think that then what purpose does it serve, right? It's empty. It doesn't serve any purpose. So why is it important? Well, in fact, that is one of the most important idea in mathematics, and you got to be extremely careful when you face like tests on this topic, because it's often where traps are set about these empty sets. So maybe I'm not gonna go too deep into empty set this video. I'm gonna go into the next video. So right now, just remember, it means a set that is empty. that has nothing in it, right? So they would say set A has one element 1 and element 2 element 3 in it, so it's not an empty set. But when you see this sign, it's an empty that has nothing in it, so it's called a empty set. And that'll be our my introduction on the sets notation. And next lesson I will go more into the details, and yeah, and I'll hope to see you next class.